Hello, and welcome to Twin Tigers Data. My name's Thomas Kissner. Let's get started. Today we're going to be talking about barbarians, the most ferocious and fearless warriors in the entire game, and also the dumbest. We're going to be covering the 5th edition version of the barbarian, not the 3.5 or other editions. Now, these barbarians will... Now, first up, like I said, they're brutes, they're idiots, and they're the fiercest thing that you're ever going to fight. That your players can play as, at least. They can take and give immense amount of damage. Now, a lot of times people will see them in either light, medium armor, and or not bearing a shield. However, some of the time they'll choose not to due to one of their abilities. They can wield all weapons that are in the game, considering the fact that they haven't released anything that's called an exotic weapon, which is a weapon that is not normally used inside a fight. For example, the sai from an Oriental adventure, and so on and so forth, things like those. They can get the most health possible with a D12 plus whatever their constitution modifier is. Whenever there's a fight possible and a marching line required, expect them in the front. So if you want to try and kill as many of your party members because they're pissing you off, you're gonna want to create some secret doors that the barbarian can't see on the sides with enemies waiting there, just so that then the doors pop open as the wizards who are standing in the middle all get killed while the barbarian's up at the front with nobody to fight. However, GMs, you should expect your weak enemies to be dead quickly after a few rounds, just by them alone. I have a barbarian that I use inside Adventurers League, and he is able to swing 3 times in a round for at least 2 of his 3 rages, and even then he's dealing 2d6. He's wielding a +1 greatsword, so that's 2d6 plus 1 from right off the bat on how much damage they're taking. The base abilities. Raging, which is the thing that makes the barbarian so dangerous. It improves their damage and also reduces the amount of damage they take per hit, as long as it's not a magical weapon, for A, and B, it is a piercing, bludgeoning, or slashing weapon. Not like, say, a breath weapon of fire. You're still going to take full damage from that. However, if it's a bludgeoning assassin, if it's an assassin vine wrapping itself around the barbarian, they're only going to take half damage. Now, like I said before, they can choose not to wear armor, and this is why. They can use their dexterity and their constitution for their AC. So if they have, say, a 15 dexterity and a 17 constitution, instead of having a 12 without armor, they now have a 15 without armor. So a lot less armor choices they will want to choose from. They have advantage on dex saves when it comes to traps and spells, and also advantage on attacks while giving enemies advantage on their next attack against you. So for example, what I mean is you decide to roll an attack. Okay, you're going to use the specific ability. Now that you've used this specific ability, your opponent, every time he tries to hit you, is getting advantage to try and hit you. They gain another attack, they gain more movement speed, and also they gain up to 3 more damage dice per crit. So if my barbarian using that great sword were to crit, Instead of using only 4d6, he would be using 7. However, this is about level 17, 18. So tier 4, very far off from where he is right now. And also, eventually, they gain Constitution and Strength to their score specifically, up to a maximum of 24. And they gain a +4 for both of these. They receive advantage on initiative checks and also are always able to act on the surprise round. And while they're raging, you can make a con save to drop to 1 hit point instead of 0. And your rage never stops unless you choose to. You can use your strength score if your strength check roll, say your strength is 18, and you roll and your total for your strength check is only a 5. Okay, now you're going to use that ability to turn that 5 into an 18, which is more likely to do what you need it to do. Now we're going to go into the specializations. First up, the Berserker, one of the only 2 paths that you can take or specializations inside the player's handbook. Now, this Barbarian specialization allows you to attack 1 more time per round at the cost of exhaustion. However, what it says inside the book is that he gets an extra bonus attack. As a bonus action, you can attack. So if your GM reads that and reads it as differently as myself and also some other players do, and think, oh, he gets another, right as soon as he takes on that extra attack, he gets a 4th swing. Now, personally, I don't believe this. It's more a 3 swing max. This allows for you to make the battles last longer than 12 seconds. And also it allows you to, forces your players to plan more than just have the Barbarian go in there, swing, get out. Now, you can't be charmed, and if you're already charmed, it's paused right as soon as you're entering rage. And when you drop out of rage, then the charming starts again. So it continues after that. Now you can frighten someone within 30 feet of you by using one of your actions during the battle. And finally, when you take a melee hit from an enemy within your melee range, you can use your reaction to attack him 1 time, not 3 times like you're able to do in your regular round, only once. The Totem Warrior, the only other specialization or path that you can take from the player's handbook. Now, in the player's handbook, it only has 3 of these 5 creatures: the bear, the eagle, and the wolf. Inside the book, Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide, it also produces the elk and the tiger. And now, the bear, you gain resistance to almost all damage except for psychic damage when you enter your rage. You can double your carry capacity. You gain advantage on checks to move objects or break them, and enemies trying to hit an ally around you have disadvantage to hit them, while when you're trying to be hit by this enemy, it's easier. So this greatly benefits your rogue characters. For example, he attacks, you're making the enemy focused on you because he can't hit the rogue as easily, not because he's wearing, say, +3 armor, but because he also has disadvantage to be hit, because of this ability, and now that enemy has to swing everything at you, while the rogue sneakily stabs him in the back and deals extra damage that is mortifyingly deadly. Next up, the Eagle. Now, raging while unarmored makes you harder to hit as you run away, meaning if someone does an attack of opportunity, then he has disadvantage to try and hit you. You can see things up to 1 mile away. And also, I believe you gain advantage on your perception checks based on sight alone. And finally, you gain a flight speed equal to your own original speed. The Wolf. Allies get advantage to enemies that are directly around you. So if you're here and you have 9 enemies around you within your melee range, then your allies can come up and receive advantage to try and hit them. You can stealth and track your enemies or other things faster, moving at now full speed instead of a slower speed. And as a bonus action, you can try to knock a large or smaller enemy prone. Elk. When raging unarmored, your speed will increase. You can double your pace while both are on a mount or walking, and you can increase the speed of your allies up to 10 allies with this pace move increase. And you have a chance to move through the same space as a large or smaller creature. However, this will require, I believe, it's either a strength check or something around there. The Tiger. This specific animal will allow you to jump better, receive 2 out of 4 skills on a specific list, and also after moving 20 feet, you can bonus action attack an enemy. So this is good charging up to the enemy. However, after that, it's pretty much useless. So you gain a third try to hit. However, you're going to suffer an attack of opportunity if you try to move again. Next up, from Xanathar's Guide to Everything, we have the Ancestral Guardians. The first target you hit each round gets disadvantage against anyone besides you, and receives resistance against all damage that one specific enemy does. So if you hit one enemy and then, however, you're surrounded by 3 enemies that are hitting you, one enemy is going to have resistance to all the damage it deals. However, the other 2 are going to deal full damage. You can reduce the amount of damage one ally receives around you and eventually send it straight back at the enemy for exactly the same amount of damage that you reduced. So, for example, if you're a tier 4 character, you can reduce it by 4d6 and say you roll an 18. Now from that 18, you send it back at him, dealing 18 points of damage. And now you can cast Augury or Clairvoyance. And if you cast Clairvoyance, one of your ancestors will appear and give you the information you need. The Storm Herald. Much like the Totem Warrior, this one has multiple choices after you start playing as this specialization. And your choices are the desert, the sea, and the tundra. Now, the desert deals fire damage to those around you. You gain resistance to fire, and you cannot befall to extreme heat. For example, if you're inside the desert and all of a sudden the DM asks the party to roll for a constitution check because they've been standing out in the sun for over an hour without a break, you don't need to make that constitution check, and you give the reason why as being a storm herald of the desert. Now, you can also set on fire a flammable object. However, there are 2 rules. 1, yes, it has to be flammable. 2, it cannot be worn by a fellow party member. So, for example, if you want to set on, or even an enemy, so if you want to set on fire the shirt that's being worn by a peasant, you're not able to. However, once that peasant takes off his shirt, go ahead, set it on fire. I approve. Anyways, the sea. This one, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot one. You can also deal fire damage to an enemy that hits you, and also it's a small amount. The sea. This one will do lightning damage to those around you. You also gain a swim speed, being able to breathe underwater, and you also gain lightning resistance. And when an enemy hits you, you're able, they will have to make a check after you use your reaction, or they will be knocked prone if they fail. The tundra. You can give allies temporary hit points. You gain resistance to cold damage. And just like the desert Storm Herald, however, the exact opposite on this part, you do not befall extreme cold conditions. You can freeze an unoccupied 5-foot cube of water. Now, this means that even if a fish or the kraken that you're trying to freeze part of its tentacle on, this will not allow you to freeze that 5-foot cube of water. Instead, it will remain as a pure 5-foot cube of water. However, if you freeze a block of ice that's right next to that tentacle or right next to that fish, you can freeze that one. However, you can't freeze the one that's being occupied by the tentacle or by the guppy. And also, after an enemy has hit you, you can reduce their movement speed to 0 up until your turn on the round. Finally, the Zealot from Xanathar's Guide to Everything. This one specifically is more of a... Okay, now this is going to sound weird, I know, but this one is a cleric barbarian, essentially. It's a kind of a multi-class. Now, when I say this, you are profanely devoting yourself to a god of war or fighting or slaughter or anything that involves picking up a blade or a hammer and beating the living crap out of someone or something similar. Now, first creature you hit each round gets an additional 1d6 plus your barbarian level in either necrotic or radiant damage, which is one of the reasons why I personally believe that this is a cleric barbarian multiclass in the first place. If a spell would return you from death, however, not from being undead. So, for example, if your character died and the party has resurrected you as a zombie, however, with all of your stats, you're still dead. And this ability does not work. However, if you're just a dead, laying there body, The caster does not need material components in order to revive you. Now, once per rage, you can re-roll a failed save. So if, say, a fire dragon is trying to breathe a fire weapon on you, and you try to roll 5. Let's say you roll an 11, and the check was for 16. You can re-roll to try and get that save, and however, I believe you can only use that second roll. I'm sorry. Anyways, up to 10 allies around you gain advantage on all their attacks and on their saving throws. And when you are dropped to 0, you do not fall and keep fighting. If you would die from your failed saves, you do not drop until you stop raging. So right as soon as the fight is over and the cleric has not healed you, the round immediately after that, you are dead. Officially and literally. You cannot be you are only allowed to be resurrected if they do not turn you into a zombie. Finally, this is the other specialization from the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide. This is called the Battle Rager. Now, these guys are only meant for dwarves, and this honestly reminds me of a story involving my mom. One of my mom's characters that involved an old spell called Rubber Ricochet, and her character having a handle on her back. However, off topic, they gain proficiency in a thing called spiked armor, which becomes a natural weapon for them. Spiked armor, however, only deals an extra 1d4 points of damage plus your strength mod. Eventually, you can gain a +3 when you're doing hand-to-hand combat with your enemy. However, on early levels, you're able to get a +3 damage when you decide to grapple your enemy. Now, when you do that ability that I was talking about earlier, where you get an advantage to try and hit your opponent, however, your opponent also gains advantage to try and hit you, you regain hit points equal to your Constitution modifier. So if you only have like 4 hit points right now, and you decide to use your reckless attack, you're going to and your Constitution saves a 16, you're going to regain 3 hit points. It doesn't seem like a lot, but it might help you survive that last blow that an enemy is going to deal. Now, you can also dash as a bonus action while you are raging. Now, I know I covered a lot of books inside this video. However, just to sum this up, you have a choice between. Now, sum this up. What is right? Who am I right to be? The question is not who are you right to be for a barbarian. However, it's what your character is right for, and also the conditions around you. For example, what do you want? And also, after playing 2 levels, what does your character do a lot? For example, if your character likes to swing and try to kill, you should probably go with maybe the Berserker, or if your party is going through the desert a lot, you might want to be the Storm Herald Desert. What fits your character's past? What would make the most sense with their background and their history that you have already set out? What does your party need? And my favorite question that all players should ask, what screws over your GM the most? Now, what screws over your GM the most only means what makes it the most difficult for your game master or dungeon master, as they call it in D&D. What screws them over the most when they're trying to build a fight? The Barbarian makes it so much more difficult because they just deal so much more damage than a fighter or a paladin or a monk, and it gets so hard to deal with. Now, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And hey, if you want to share how terrible my videos are, let other people know that I exist, go ahead. I don't care. I enjoy it. So please remember to stay safe, have fun, and game responsibly. Adios.